And I'm going to go ahead and introduce one of our partners, James Jackson, who is the head of product at Ternary. He's going to give you also another sneak peek at what they'll be presenting at FinOps X. James, you want to kick us off on the evolution of governance?
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. Good to see everybody. This is me. I'm James Jackson. I'm with Ternary. I've been there for about a little over a year. I won't waste too much time giving my resume or anything like that. I will say that, I'd love to see you at FinOps X. Just one disclaimer. I am, I guess, what can be charitably described as a high-functioning introvert. So, and all those little intricacies and ticks that go with that. But, I do really want to talk to you. So please feel free. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about the fine print. I guess I would say it's no secret that governance is a pretty big ball, and so we're just going to tug on a little thread for right now. Throughout this, just for ease of communication, I talk about these in discrete phases or versions, but really it's kind of a big continuum of things, and so that's just to make it a little bit easier to talk about. So I wouldn't put too much weight in terms of actually being different, very discrete like stages of things. Through this, we're kind of ignoring pricing negotiations. When we talk about these sort of things. Yeah, that's another way to change your pricing, and certainly that's something that we do help people with, but I wouldn't do that. But talking just a little bit about usage and rate optimization, we're just going to focus a little bit just on the crawl phase with this. Once again, just drilling down just for this particular piece, but certainly I wouldn't say that this is the only thing we're talking about in terms of governance there. Next slide, please. Governance, what are we really talking about? This kind of goes back to the whole accountability thing. When most people hear accountability, they kind of groan. But a big part of it we don't want to miss is, understanding what good looks like or what done looks like for something. And then understanding, where that responsibility lies. And then, how do you actually measure, like, did you actually hit good, So some of the things that, we've certainly done over the past year, we've enhanced things like, controlling who can access certain information in terms of security. Also, in terms of that workflow, like how can we help you actually manage that workflow so you don't have everybody trying to do the same thing at once, or understanding like how to look back at that. And then also, how do you actually take advantage of, what computers are good at, but, feed in what's good for you might not be good for everybody else. And so, putting some guardrails on best practices, but some of those things we've done, but just drilling in a little bit farther in terms of like where this journey kind of started and some of the phases you might look at in terms of optimization for governance. Next slide, please. So version baseline. When we first started, way back, in the dark ages of like 2017, the general natural motion was, the big thing was everybody migrating to the cloud at that point in time. And the natural motion in terms of the rules that most people played by was, it's very ad hoc in terms of the cadence, was very stage gate. But really, you'd want to like go through a lot of usage optimization and get things pretty well stable. So make sure you weren't actually purchasing your cloud resources the same way you purchase a data center resource. And then later on, and only after that, you would do some rate optimization or coverage with things like reserved instance and savings plans and stuff like that. What you were targeting when doing these sort of things is 100% utilization, ideally for those commitments that you would purchase. Now, the good part about this is it's super efficient. Wasn't a whole lot of wasted motion and not a whole lot of wasted resource doing this. That being said, one of the big downsides is certainly a longer time to value. So we talk about moving at the speed of cloud, things change rapidly. And so anything you can do to up that cycle time decrease that cycle time would be really a good thing. So next slide, please. So moving to a lot of the things that have happened since that first iteration. Cadence, so definitely one of the things that most people have adopted, we talk about, is a regular cadence that aligns with what's the cadence of your organization. So what are your planning cycles? And that really aligning with those things just helps a lot with, we talk about putting things in front of people. If there's a cadence somebody's already used to, then certainly that helps to actually do that. So adapting to those quarterly, weekly, monthly sort of planning cycles, certainly that helps with that. Iterative cycles. So we talked about before that usage optimization happening, and then, the next stage would be this rate optimization. Actually, what more is going on, and what a lot of the tools are built around is this sort of iterative thing of going along to make sure that you can take advantage of new technologies, changes in pricing, that you don't get locked in at a higher price when things are going to change. And also just the fact that your environment is changing. So with this, in addition to the things that we had above, with this, we found we can shorten the cycle time, greater lifetime savings, and improve the general ROI of making those investments. Next slide, please. So VNext, on the right is a little graphic. I don't know if folks have seen it. It's called an OODA Loop. It's developed by a fighter pilot. And the general idea is, things happening, when you're facing an adversary is there are 4 things you have to do. You have to observe your environment. You have to orient yourself to it. You have to make a decision about what to do, and then you have to actually act on that decision. That being said, the other person's trying to do this too. And whoever can do this the fastest forces the other person to start all over again, and they never actually get to the point of acting. Well, we're talking about, optimization and governance. The real adversary is just kind of the environment. There's not somebody else trying to kill you. At least I don't think so anyway. But what's actually happening is things are changing so quickly. Anything you can do to up that cycle time is better. So you're not always trying to constantly observe and decide. You actually get to the point where you can act and then measure based on those actions. And so to do that, we're taking advantage more, pattern recognition, learning algorithms, things that computers do very well to actually inject those. And so setting the thresholds in some of the other phases, like people talk about like the 80-20 rule in terms of, I don't want to do anything that isn't utilized 80% of the time or doesn't save me at least 20%. That's probably a good benchmark and will work for most folks, but you want to customize that for you. But it's always been kind of a ad hoc sort of guesswork sort of thing, and allow a computer to actually help you set those guidelines. In addition, with that, you can actually make your cadence really, you only need to be bothered with this like once something happens that you need to know about. And the computer's really good at actually identifying those things and showing you those things when you need to know them. And so these are some of the things that are really guiding us on our development framework. But with this, we can, as I mentioned, we can actually accelerate that cycle time. You can make it highly customizable so that what's best practices for somebody else might not be best practice for you, but how do you determine that? And so a computer is actually very good at doing that sort of thing, and just pulling out that guesswork. So go on to the next slide, please. So kind of some of the takeaways. Earlier, as I mentioned before, these are presented in stages, but they're really not. Earlier is not necessarily obsolete. It's all about accelerating your time to value, getting to a customized solution over just a standard best practice. I've been one of the ones that's championed all the time that I want to build a platform where somebody can almost slip and fall and land in best practices. But at the end of the day, those best practices aren't the same for everybody. And once again, these are toolboxes. It's not a rigid formula, like this is exactly the form you have to follow. But what you want is something that actually brings things together that are the best for you. And then most of all, the evolution continues. What's perfect today won't be perfect tomorrow, and it's going to continue to evolve. And so things will keep changing, and those tools that help you evolve are always good. All right, well, thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it. Please come and join us at the FinOps X at our breakout session or at our booth. We'd love to talk to you.
JR here from the FinOps Foundation. Thank you for watching. Please go to FinOps.org if you want to get plugged into this amazing community. And of course, hit subscribe right here on YouTube to get all the future content. Hope to see you soon.